Joining us from Las Vegas on C-SPAN's Newsmakers program is former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party presidential nominee. Governor, thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, great to be with all of you. Thank you.
And joining us in the questioning is David Drucker. He is senior correspondent for the Washington Examiner. He's also the host of the Examining Politics podcast, which is available online at WashingtonExaminer.com. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And Ginger Gibson, who is campaign correspondent for Reuters. Governor, let me begin with the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is set as a benchmark 15%, the minimum for you to participate in the upcoming debates, the first scheduled for late September. Is that a fair benchmark from your standpoint?
I think the benchmark is fair. What's not fair is that all of the polls being conducted right now have Trump and Clinton, and then about 40% of the polls on the second or third question they'll ask, well, what happens when you add Johnson to that mix? And right now we're pretty solidly in the 10% range. But if they were to, and 99% of the media just reports the top two lines. So really what you've got, the majority of people in this country don't even know that there's a third-party candidate. I believe if my name were just included in the top line that I'd be at 20%. I and Bill Weld would be at 20%. A lot of that having to do with the discontent of Trump and Clinton. But Bill Weld and myself, Libertarian candidates for president, we're going to be the only third party on the ballot in all 50 states.
Let me turn to Ginger Gibson with some new polling numbers from Reuters just out today.
Governor, the Reuters Ipsos poll numbers out this afternoon, Friday afternoon, found Clinton at 41, Trump at 35, you at 7%, and Jill Stein at 3%. That is less than half of the 15% mark you need to hit. What can you do between now and September to try to clear 15%? And how are you reaching out to those disaffected Republicans? 35 is pretty low for a Republican nominee. There are clearly a lot of Republicans out there who are not satisfied with their nominee.
Well, over the last month, our numbers have actually doubled. Now, 7 is about as low as I've seen, and I'm not trying to make excuse for the 7, but 7 is about as low as I've seen in any polls. And I'm just back to my example. I dare say that poll that was just conducted had Trump and Clinton at the get-go, and then as an afterthought, they added my name to it. 65% of Americans don't even know that there's a third party. So our social media numbers have doubled in the last month, and so we're now reaching about 25 million people. We're doing it with, in our case, robust fundraising, but of course that fundraising doesn't match either Trump or Clinton, but I think it just speaks volumes to just how much discontent there is out there. And I think Bill Weld and myself are in this big 6-lane highway down the middle. Look, we're fiscally conservative, we're socially tolerant, accepting, and then we're really questioning these military interventions that at the end of the day are making the world less safe, not more safe. When we support regime change, this is what we get.
Let me turn to David Drucker of the Washington Examiner.
Sir, I was hoping you could talk to us a little bit about some of the metrics of your campaign. And there's definitely been more attention given to your campaign, given the circumstances, than is normally paid to a third party, to the Libertarian nominee. Can you talk to us at all about your fundraising, where it is at? Talk to us about your campaign organization, where is it at? And also, where are we going to find you the most? Where do you think, when we look at states around the country, where do you think you can do the most damage to try and score some upset victories and possibly surprise people?
Well, we think that by being in the presidential, neither of us, Bill Weld or myself, two former Republican governors re-elected in heavily Democratic states, we think that if we're in the presidential debates, anything is possible, and we do believe that that is a very real possibility. Looking at the western states, I mean, you could look at Utah, you can look at Wyoming, Nevada, Montana, Idaho, the Dakotas, Alaska. On the east side, Bill Weld would have a list of those himself, where we might actually win outright. But the idea here is to win outright. I know that that sounds crazy, but this is a crazy election cycle. And I saw last week, 2 weeks ago, where the projected audience for the first presidential debate is going to exceed that of the Super Bowl. So there's no way that we have any chance of winning if we're not in that game, meaning the presidential debates.
But already Donald Trump has raised questions about the Commission on Presidential Debates, the dates, who the moderators will be, almost setting himself up to say, I'm not going to participate. Do you worry that if you are included in the debates, you might give either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump a reason to say, we're not going to be there?
Well, I don't think people will stand for that, but we'll see. I think that would be a big mistake, given what I just mentioned. Super Bowl audience, you decline that? I don't think that would be a wise decision politically.
Ginger Gibson.
Governor, you said that you are seeing more fundraising. In the last election cycle, when you ran as the Libertarian nominee, you accepted public funding. Are you planning to do that again this time, or have you taken that off the table as an option?
No, we've taken it off, Ginger. It's a pain in the rear. It's the fact that you know, there are billions of dollars in this fund. I mean, we check it off when we file our income tax that there are billions of dollars in this fund, and that they're disputing the $300,000 that we took in matching funds. It's political. It's Democrats and it's Republicans, and they do everything they can to discourage a third party. So we're opting out of this matching funds because of our experience the last cycle, where literally we're being questioned on I's dotted and T's crossed, and that was with a relationship with the Federal Elections Commission that kind of went like this, back and forth. They said, well, you can't hold us to anything. Well, all of a sudden the communication dried up, and now, you know, all these questions after the entire time we were engaged with them. So really, just we're going to steer clear of that.
Sir, just a quick follow-up on that. What does your fundraising look like in the third quarter? In other words, July 1st and onward.
You know, I think that it's perhaps safe to say that we might be at 10 times the level we were in the whole cycle of 2012. So I think you're going to see some robust numbers relative to Democrats and Republicans. No, it's still a long ways back, but enough funds for us to actually be able to play in this game.
Much has been written about the relationship, the friendship between your running mate, Governor Weld, and former governor and 2012 Republican nominee Mitt Romney. Will Mitt Romney be endorsing you and your running mate?
Well, I think it would really be difficult for somebody who's a prior elected Republican to endorse. Certainly it's even harder if you're an elected Republican or Democrat to cross over the line. But we are seeing that. So regardless of whether it's Mitt Romney or not, there are those that are crossing the line, and I'm really heartened by all of it.
Do you want Mitt Romney's endorsement?
Well, it would be terrific to have it, but I'm not expecting it. I'm not expecting anybody understanding the realities of being a former elected official or an elected official. You know, that's really a tough one for those that are in that position.
And let me go back to Ginger Gibson and the poll numbers from Reuters, where Donald Trump now at 35%. Does that surprise you, that low number for the Republican nominee?
Well, no, I've always maintained that Donald Trump alienates more than half of Republicans, and that Republican for me has always meant smaller government. And that's what Bill Weld and I are in spades, is smaller government. But on the civil liberties side, on the side of marriage equality, a woman's right to choose, legalizing marijuana, really questioning our military interventions, I think that's also draws from Democrats. So I think we draw equally from both sides, and no surprise, Donald Trump alienates Republicans.
Governor, what about the Ted Cruz Republicans who say, I can't vote for Donald Trump, but maybe you've encountered some who say, I also can't get behind legalizing marijuana or marriage equality or any of the other social issues. When you interact with those voters, what do you tell them, and what is your pitch to them to say that they can vote for you despite their differences?
Well, look, it doesn't matter what you are socially as long as you don't force it on others. So to come down on the side of choice on all of these issues, that's the libertarian position. But the libertarian position is also, Bill Weld and I are promising to, in the first 100 days, to submit a balanced budget on how you do that. Well, to do that, you've got to address Medicaid and Medicare. To do that, reform needs to take place with regard to Social Security, and that isn't cutting Social Security, but it's certainly reform. And then it's military spending also. When the Pentagon itself says that we could reduce U.S. bases by 20%, and that hasn't happened, where's the common sense here?
Governor, I wanted to pick up on that and talk to you about how you envision your first 100 days agenda, just to get a feel for your style and brand of libertarianism. You know, when I think a lot of voters, especially people who don't pay as much attention as we do, think about libertarians, they think about a political party that doesn't believe the government should run stoplights and, you know, let a private company go ahead and police the streets, right?
Well, you know you're a libertarian when you come to the intersection, you know, at 2 a.m., the light's red, you've sat there for a few seconds, and there's just nobody coming from any direction whatsoever. Okay, so you go through the intersection. That's kind of a libertarian trait, I think.
Yeah, and when a lot of people think of you, they think primarily, or at least first, about your stance on marijuana, which is becoming, you know, more in vogue across the country as time goes by. But walk us through, if you can, both domestically and internationally, foreign policy-wise, how you envision your presidency, what you would do in your first 100 days. And for instance, we've seen both Clinton and Trump to some degree talk about, I guess, less foreign intervention, although in some ways Trump's a lot less hawkish than Clinton. But Trump has gone so far as to say he would pull the U.S. out of a long-standing post-World War II alliances. What do you look like as a commander-in-chief as it relates to the traditional U.S. foreign policy and domestically? What do you try and do first before you've lost your political capital?
Well, we honor all treaties and obligations. That would be wrong to come into this office and not, in fact, honor everything it is that we're obligated to do. With regard to foreign policy, I think that we need to get Congress involved in a declaration of war. We need to have an invincible national defense. But when we get involved in regime change, that's when things really get messy. Not on purpose, but Clinton and Obama backed both the opposition in Libya and Syria. And this was not intentional, but they backed the opposition, they armed the opposition. Well, the opposition was aligned with ISIS. The opposition gets wiped out. ISIS ends up with all the arms. That's what we're dealing with right now. Afghanistan. I supported going into Afghanistan to begin with because we were attacked, and make no bones about it. If we're attacked, we're going to attack back. But with regard to Afghanistan, we went into Afghanistan to get Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda. After 7 months, we wiped out Al-Qaeda. No Osama bin Laden, but we could have left Afghanistan after 7 months, kept our options open for Osama bin Laden. But look, getting out of Afghanistan tomorrow, as bad as that situation might be, we're going to face those same consequences 20 years from now, if that's when we decide to get out, or forever, according to some. Look, have we not learned the lessons of history? It just doesn't work when it comes to, in this case, Afghanistan.
So do you agree or disagree with Donald Trump when he calls the president the founder of ISIS and also ties Hillary Clinton into that, calling her the MVP?
Well, unintentional. So, you know, founder of ISIS, that somehow has this connotation that they support ISIS. No, they didn't support ISIS, but the end result has been that unintended consequence of seeing that happen. But it isn't just Obama and Clinton. You know, it was going into Iraq. It was getting rid of Saddam Hussein, which was the check when it came to Iran. Regime change. We get involved in regime change. We end up with all these new consequences that continue us in this state of what seems to be endless war.
David Drucker, you want to follow up?
Just one quick follow-up. Obviously, going back in time, there are mistakes that we could look at, and if this wasn't done, then we might not be facing this problem or that problem. But what we are facing today is a threat from the Islamic State. I mean, both Republicans, Democrats, and people unaffiliated seem to recognize that. There have been two ISIS-inspired terrorist attacks on American soil in the past year, less than a year. We've seen what's been going on in Europe. What is your plan? Do you think it requires a U.S.-led plan to combat the threat of ISIS and defeat it?
Well, how about Congress getting involved and having a national debate and discussion on how we move forward? I really do think that ISIS is, you could look at it as sands through an hourglass. I mean, they are regionally contained. Now, you point out that there were terrorist actions carried out in this country that were ISIS-inspired, certainly not directly linked with ISIS, but we'll see that ISIS threat through to its conclusion. I also think it's significant that a couple of weeks ago there was a poll among active military personnel on whom they supported for President of the United States, and myself and Bill Weld were on top of that poll with Trump second and Clinton third.
Governor, Donald Trump raised a lot of eyebrows last month when he said that he would require some checks before moving to defend a NATO ally if the Russians were to attack, or another country were to attack some of those nations. Do you share his opinion that NATO needs to be reevaluated and that the treaty is outdated? Or do you think that the current situation where we would as a nation move very quickly to protect a NATO ally should remain in place?
Well, we need to honor all existing treaties and obligations. Make no bones about that. But the world is dynamic, government is dynamic, re-examining these treaties. Do we really want to go to war over countries that were in the former Soviet Union? Communism is dead. You know, that was Russia that led that revolution. The New World moving forward, look, the whole intention of a Johnson-Weld administration will be to make the world a safer place, not a less safe place. In that context, I really think the biggest threat in the world right now is North Korea, and the fact that at some point these intercontinental ballistic missiles are going to work. So from the standpoint of diplomacy, I think we should really join with China here to address this, because they understand this better than anyone. We've got 40,000 troops in South Korea. There's no chance that North Korea invades South Korea conventionally. But they do have those nuclear weapons. We've got them covered with our umbrella, but that's the scary part of all this is, really, are we going to go to nuclear war with North Korea? That, in my opinion, is something that has to get addressed, and we could do that with China and potentially have the opportunity to withdraw 40,000 troops from South Korea. Imagine China with 40,000 troops in Central America.
One of the words that we've been hearing a lot, temperament, with regard to Donald Trump, to follow up on what Ginger Gibson said about his comments regarding NATO and our allies. Do you think that Donald Trump has the temperament to be commander-in-chief?
No, and I base that on all these things that he said, starting with the deportation of 11 million illegal immigrants. That has a basis in total misunderstanding, building a fence across the border, and I'm speaking now as a former border state governor, when he calls Mexican immigrants murderers and rapists, when in fact statistically they're more law-abiding than U.S. citizens. They're not taking jobs that U.S. citizens want. We should be embracing immigration. We should make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to be able to get a work visa. And a work visa should entail a background check and a Social Security card that applicable taxes get paid. But with regard to being inflammatory and divisive and isolationist, these are the words that Donald Trump seems to be uttering every single day. I think he said 150 things that would disqualify anyone else from being president of the United States, and all you have to do is just wait until tomorrow and it'll be 153.
Sticking with domestic politics, Governor, talk to us about your position on NAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Although the polling still shows, at least some new polling shows, that there is somewhat of majority support for free trade agreements, there politically has become, in a bipartisan sense, very difficult to muster support for the TPP, and even talking about renegotiating or walking away from NAFTA can get you a good loud cheer. And it's, you know, the two major candidates, the Republican and the Democrat, are in somewhat of agreement on trade, at least rhetorically. What would you do as president? And just if I can throw this out there as well, when you talk about reducing the size and scope of government, what do you mean?
Well, is there any part of government that couldn't be more efficient? I don't think any of us would suggest that that government can't be more efficient and that everybody could do with less. But you can't do with less if you're not going to actually address Medicaid and Medicare. Those are the 800-pound gorillas in the room. And we are definitely the free trade candidates. I think that crony capitalism is alive and well in the world. And crony capitalism, very simply, that's when government gets involved in these deals that really unfairly give advantage to those that ultimately pay for that advantage. Free trade, and I'm afraid in this country we've come to associate free trade and crony capitalism as one and the same, when in fact they're really opposites. Free trade is what it implies, without government interference. Now, government regulation, look, if it comes to health and safety, that's one thing, but if it comes to actually unfair advantage, meaning those that have money and influence, they pay for it. And I'm speaking now as the former governor of New Mexico, seeing this legislation passed and vetoing all of it whenever I saw, you know, unfair advantage. I don't think we can achieve income equality in this country, but what we can achieve is opportunity equality. And I think that's what everybody, this is my hypothesis, I think that that's what people genuinely want. And make no mistake, I think that that right now is an issue, that there's not opportunity equality, but there can be.
Governor, there is one place in the polls where you are doing better than Donald Trump, and that's among millennials. One might joke that it would be your marijuana position, but other than that, why do you think young people are more interested in your campaign than they are in your Republican opponent?
Well, I am leading Trump when it comes to millennials, and if you take the 18 to 24 age group, actually leading among that age group. So you can draw your own conclusions. We've blown it. My generation has blown it. These are issues that should have been resolved long ago. They haven't been. And the issues, you know, that there would be health care going forward, that there would be a safety net for all of us, that there would be retirement going forward. I think young people recognize that unless something is done, it's just not going to happen. And I think young people recognize the fallacy of going to war, supporting regime change.
One state that you have the possibility of picking up is Utah, where Donald Trump did poorly in the primary. He's even admitted this past week that it's been a tough state for him. So just use that as one example. How do you win the state of Utah?
Well, I think that the majority of Republicans are about smaller government. That's what drew me to the Republican Party. But there's this social dogma that the Republicans have of late, and I'm now talking about the last 20 years, that social conservative, you're either on board or you're not. And libertarians, look, libertarians could care less whether you're socially conservative or socially liberal. Just don't force it on anybody else. And I think the Republican Party is carrying that on its back. And I think when it comes to all Republicans, Utah, for example, look, it's first and foremost about smaller government, and then there is one unforgivable in life, in my opinion, and that's hypocrisy. That's saying one thing and doing another, and I think politicians are really poor in that category, meaning saying one thing and, in fact, doing another. I've always prided myself on telling the truth. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. It makes things a lot simpler.
David Drucker.
In terms of where you go next, and we touched on this a little bit earlier in the conversation, is it the mountain states? Is that where you think you can do the most damage in terms of damage to your opponents? And how much of what you are doing in this campaign do you think can have a lasting effect versus the fact that you've got a sort of a chance at attention here because Americans think so poorly, historically poorly, of the two major party nominees?
Well, where's the representation for 43% of America that are registered as independent? I happen to think that Bill Weld and myself occupy that, what I call a big 6-lane highway down the middle of what has become extreme on both sides, Republicans and Democrats. Look, the scenario here is you vote for Clinton, you vote for Trump, things are going to be more polarized than ever. And let's not kid ourselves, they are going to be, either side winning. What about the scenario of a couple of, well, libertarians winning, a couple of former Republican governors serving in heavily blue states, hiring libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, a real bipartisan administration, and calling out both sides to come to the middle to deal with the issues facing this country. I mean, under those three scenarios, I think you can really make a case that the third scenario might make some sense.
And finally, if you do not participate in the debates next month, then what?
Well, we'll keep after it, but I don't think there's any chance of winning. Can't win if you're not in the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl, hey, is to see who's the next president of the United States. I'm optimistic that it's going to happen.
But just to be clear, if you're not in the debates, you don't think you can win?
No, there's no way that you can win the race. That would just, in my opinion, defy reality.
Gary Johnson is the Libertarian Party nominee, the former governor of New Mexico. He is joining us from Las Vegas. Thank you for being with us here on C-SPAN. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you so much.
And we continue the conversation with David Drucker of the Washington Examiner and Ginger Gibson of Reuters. And David Drucker, let's talk more broadly about the race, because you wrote a piece this past week. The polls are not lying. Donald Trump is losing.
Right. And if you look at all of the data and you look at the historical record of the data, we can be pretty confident that what the polls are telling us today are correct for what is happening today. And what does that mean? It means Trump's losing to Clinton. We've seen a spate of national polls. Just today, Friday, we saw brand new battleground polls. He's losing, and in some cases losing badly. Does it mean he can't turn it around? No. Does it mean he's definitely going to lose? No. But I think one of the biggest misconceptions that voters have, maybe because it's convenient, maybe because they want to believe so badly that their side can win, is that somehow the polling is not telling the full truth, either on purpose or accidentally. But if we look back at elections, whether midterm elections or in particular, given we're talking about a presidential election, 2012, 2008, 2004, we found that the national polls tend to tell us what's happening, and they tend to, the very last polls before Election Day, tend to tell us who's going to win, and that candidate has won.
But Ginger Gibson, your poll that came out today, the Reuters poll showing that Donald Trump is struggling, and yet it's still only mid-August, and we've seen historically that things can change pretty quickly.
I think Gary Johnson made an excellent point where he said the debates are the Super Bowl. They can change. That's going to be the next inflection point. We look, as David said, at trend lines, and right now the trend lines are very bad for Donald Trump. It's going to take big movements for those trend lines to be altered. Right now, we are not seeing that happen on the campaign trail. And frankly, most Americans aren't paying attention. They're more excited about Michael Phelps' latest gold medal than they are about watching a campaign speech. I think it's going to be those debates, those moments. And for that reason, if Donald Trump opts not to participate, it could be detrimental to his campaign, because he would lose that stage to try to move those numbers in the opposite direction.
And David Drucker, let me go back to one of your questions, because if I could glean from it, is Gary Johnson ready for this moment? He's been getting a lot of media attention. We've been covering him. You're writing about him. He's been on all the national networks. And yet, is he maximizing this opportunity?
I mean, only time will tell. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if there's anything more he could do to maximize this moment. You know, the one thing about politics is I think we tend to overthink this stuff. When people want to vote for you, they vote for you. If they like you, they send you money. I mean, you know, Johnson is a competent third choice in this race who has a record of being a businessman and a governor of a real actual state for 2 terms. So he's not some gadfly. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a lot of American voters being inspired by a libertarian philosophy of governing, even Johnson and Weld's sort of, not harsh libertarianism, it's not going to be enough. So I think he gave an impressive interview to us. I was actually, I got more out of him than I actually expected to based on what I've seen in the past. But at the end of the day, it's about getting voters to turn out for you. And look, in the modern era of campaigning, one of the things that hurts any third-party candidate who doesn't have a real apparatus is all of the troops on the ground and the data analytics. The voting, I agree with so much of what Ginger just said, but the voting actually starts next month. In just a few weeks, the absentee ballots in North Carolina are being mailed out. October 12th, Ohio early voting starts. So by the time we get to September 26th and the first debate, and then the next debate's in October, voting's well underway, votes have been banked, and so this is not like 30, 40 years ago when you waited for the final 72 hours of a campaign to start moving voters to the polls, and you could have that late surge or an October surprise that could really blow things up. I mean, things really can get set in stone. We saw it in 2012. Yeah, a lot of people aren't paying attention in the summer, but Barack Obama blew Mitt Romney out of the water in advertising over the summer, and he never recovered.
And Ginger Gibson, half a minute left. You're on the campaign trail starting this weekend with Donald Trump. What are you looking for?
I'm looking to see if he's trying to connect directly with voters. He is holding these big rallies. Those are his supporters. We know those people are going to be voting for him. So what is his campaign doing to reach the undecided? What is he doing to reach the people who he could win over from a Gary Johnson or from an undecided position that are open to voting for him? That's really what's the most important thing between now and this election for him.
Ginger Gibson, who is campaign correspondent for Reuters, and David Drucker, not only senior correspondent for the Washington Examiner, but also the host of the Examining Politics podcast, available on your website. To both of you, thanks very much for being with us. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Steve.
A special airing of C-SPAN's Newsmakers program with Libertarian presidential nominee Gary Johnson. And now your chance to call in with your reaction to what you heard from Mr. Johnson, the former New Mexico governor who leads the Libertarian ticket. The number is on your screen. Tell us what you think of Gary Johnson running for president, and in general your thoughts on where things stand in the 2016 presidential race. If you are a Libertarian, we have a line set aside for you, 202-748-8920. If you're a Republican or Democrat, both those parties, one line tonight, 202-748-8921. All others, 202-748-8922. You can tweet us at C-SPAN or leave a comment, a posting on our Facebook page. A reminder that you can see this Newsmakers interview again at the regular Sunday times, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern, in case you missed any of it, or watch it on our website, cspan.org. Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson joining us this week. And our first caller is a Libertarian from Gallup, New Mexico. Patrick joining us. What did you think of Gary Johnson, Patrick?
Initially I thought his personality was kind of possibly off-putting, but I honestly think that, after watching him a little while, I'm actually excited about him. I think his policies are great. I think from a millennial perspective, honestly, Trump is just too off-putting to honestly vote for. So I'm really liking him after hearing him for a little while.
What did you think of Gary Johnson as your governor?
I was actually in Arizona at the time, but
okay.
I talked to some New Mexicans, and they actually said that they really liked him. He got voted in twice, so people liked him. So, I'm liking his social policies, I'm liking his fiscal policies. So I think he'd be a nice, refreshing, a new face in there.
All right, thanks for the call. Charlotte in Oneonta, New York, on the line for others. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. I found the polling numbers about how well Gary Johnson's doing with young people to be really interesting. And in a New York Times article that I read, Jill Stein's also polling somewhere around 15% with people 18 to 24. And I think that if the Libertarian Party and Green Party can lose well, I don't think either of them really have a chance of winning at all. But if they can lose well and then continue to lose well for a couple elections, I think they could both be really legitimate political parties by the time those 18 to 2024 voters are 40 and 50.
What do you consider, Charlotte, what do you consider losing well? How do they poll?
Well, sure. So for Jill Stein, if she can get above 5%, I think she becomes eligible for more funding for elections and things, or getting more permanent spots on ballots. I know that one of the reasons that the Green Party has like a set spot on the New York ballot is because of how well NATO did in 2000. So if a party can lose well, then I think they can convince more people that it's worth losing with them until they have enough people that they can win.
All right. Thanks for calling. A Republican caller, Lex, is joining us from Burlington, Kentucky. Go ahead, Lex.
Well, I'm really grateful to hear that Gary Johnson is running for president. It gives us a viable choice. Some of the things between the two major parties have just gone crazy. So I'm voting for Gary Johnson, but I'm very concerned about his needing to appear for the presidential debates. The 15% hurdle is created by an artificial commission on presidential debates, which is essentially a partnership between Republicans and Democrats. How can he get onto their stage when they control the access to their own party?
Okay, thanks, Les. Lex, thanks for that call. I think we lost your call. Lex pointing out the threshold of 15% polling that the Commission on Presidential Debates has set as part of their criteria, along with being on enough state ballots to have a mathematical chance at winning the Electoral College. Now, Gary Johnson not yet polling in that 15% range. And he said on Newsmakers that if he's not in the debates, he doesn't think he will win. And we received this tweet commenting on that comment that Gary Johnson made. Lyle says, Governor Gary Johnson, the flip side is that if he is in the debates, there's also no chance of him winning. But he didn't mention that. Back to your calls. Bill in Spring, Texas, on the others line.
Yeah, I think Gary Johnson has a lot of really good ideas. My question that I have is with the polling is that Donald Trump is getting 25,000, 30,000 people in these arenas where he goes. And Hillary Clinton is getting 200 or 300 people, and yet they say she's winning in the polls. My question is, who are they polling, number one? I don't think the polls are indicative of the mainstream of America all the way across a reasonable cross-section. That's number one. Number two, they should let all of the candidates on the stage and let them debate each other. And let the people make up their own minds.
Where would Bill, where would you draw the line, though? There are many candidates if you go down to the smaller political parties. Is there a limit, though, to how many people could be on that debate stage?
I think the four that are up there right now, you have Trump and Hillary, which are the top two, obviously, and it's going to probably come down to one of them. And then you have Jill Stein and you have Gary Johnson. Those four people, let them air their ideas, right, and let the people decide. You know, one thing Trump says that I do believe in is that it should be the people's choice and not an electoral college, not a Democratic Party, not a Republican Party, not an elitist group of people making decisions for the mass number of people. The citizens should make the choice.
Thanks for calling, Bill. We'll move on, get some other viewpoints. A libertarian from Erie, Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump appeared today. Ed is on the line now. Hi, Ed.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
First of all, like you said, Trump was here today, and you're going to be replaying it next, I guess.
That's right. And
just listen to him. He has no policy. All he does is berate and berate and berate. He says he's going to bring the jobs back. Doesn't specify how he's going to bring the jobs back. Says he's going to build the best military. Gives no plan about how he's going to build the military. Says he's going to do the vets that have served. Doesn't do a thing for them. Now, as far as the presidential commission, like Governor Johnson said, if he was put on the polls when they send them out, not added as an afterthought. He would be in the 15%. If you check social media, you will see him all over social media. Retweets, Facebook shares, people that follow him, I get a lot of them. Republican friends that I have would not even consider voting for Donald Trump, want to vote for this guy. So let us see him debate Trump and Hillary and see where it gets us.
Thanks, Ed. From Erie, Pennsylvania. Again, Donald Trump was in Erie, part of a Pennsylvania campaign swing today, and we'll have his rally for you in that city in just a few moments here on C-SPAN as our Road to the White House coverage continues. Time for a few more calls, though. Josh in Lacon, Kansas is a Republican caller. Go ahead.
Well, lots of good comments on lots of issues, calling from probably the most unpopulated county of any caller on this series this evening. There's
how
many
people in your
3,000 registered voters within the county.
Okay.
And Mr. Johnson mentioned how he could potentially pull lots of western states. I think there's a strong chance of that happening in such small areas such as this, where potentially even just a couple hundred votes would actually swing a county to eventually make its way into the state, and then national registration of who voted for whom. And so I was really glad to hear him mention a few things on rural issues, which are very largely left totally unmentioned. You hardly ever hear the word farmer, agriculture in any political discussion in modern times whatsoever. And on that note, I've heard him mention marijuana multiple times, and I'm really curious to know what an issue related to hemp might be in his opinion.
All right, Josh, thanks for calling. We'll get one more call on from a Democrat in Baltimore. Anthony joins us now. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, and thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I am actually, I was independent, and I registered Democrat recently, and a real strong Hillary Clinton supporter. As an African-American man, find it a little concerning when I hear some of the Trump supporters and that side of politics. It kind of, to be honest with you, from an inner city community, it's kind of frightening. So we're doing everything we can to kind of quiet that noise and to see, like, Hillary Clinton become president, because it would be very frightening to see Donald Trump win. And I just honestly wanted to say that.
Thanks for calling, Anthony. Our Road to the White House coverage continues this Monday. We'll be following the campaign of the Democratic presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton. She will be in Scranton, Pennsylvania, with the Vice President, Joe Biden.